And hello, movie lovers, and welcome to the show. So today I have my very good friend Beth from the Made for TV Movie Podcast back with me again. We did The Outsiders. I think like back in March we did that, but this time we're going to be reviewing Real Genius. This is actually one of my other favorite Val Kilmer movies just recently that I was introduced to thanks to Beth. This is my first time watching it, so this is going to be like a first time review for me watching this movie. So let's go ahead. Let's review Real Genius. Hey Beth, how are you?
Hi, John. Thanks for having me back.
You're very welcome. I'm glad to have you back over here.
It's always fun to be on the show, and I'm so excited to hear what you have to say because this is, and he made so many, but this is my favorite Val Kilmer film. I don't know why, but it just is. It just gives me all the feels, and seeing it again did the same. So I'm super excited to talk about it.
Me too. This actually came out the year that I was born, so it was like in '85. So this movie is just as old as me.
I was a sophomore in high school.
But
I
yeah,
was a
I'm
little
excited.
older. I saw this in the theater when it originally came out. Let's put it that way.
Okay, so I'm gonna be an NA as far as nostalgia goes, and everybody knows what I do here. I go on ahead, I rate a nostalgia review based on a 10 on how we felt about it nostalgically. I never watched this movie. I haven't even seen this movie even in a VHS store or anything in Blockbuster or anything like that. So I have no ties to this nostalgically. So we're just going to remove that from myself. But I want to know, Beth, like best out of 10, where do you pull this nostalgic to your heart? I know you said you've seen this in the movie theater,
Yeah.
but I just want to go on ahead and get your nostalgic rating out of 10 and go from there.
I think I would put it at a 10 because I love this movie so much when I saw it. And it hits some real like 80s sort of movie marks. Like starts out with like the whole government scene, and there was a in 80s movies, and you've watched enough now to know, especially in the comedies, there's the whole sort of us versus them thing, which just
Right.
hit this movie hit was all about the us versus them, and good guy prevails, that kind of thing. So for me, it's a full on 10.
I gotcha. And also too, it kind of also reminds me of war games a little bit because of the fact
Yes.
that during that time we were facing like the Cold War. We were facing different things within the 80s. And this is what I got from it. I got like the Cold War kind of vibes to it, a little bit of war games with it and stuff like that too. But instead you have kids that are creating this thing. And that's something that I thought was very different, very unique with it.
Yes,
Using
it was.
kids as a way to basically make your weapon versus it being a high security level officer doing something like that or a scientist doing it. So
Right.
I thought it was very different and unique in it.
Yeah, and the beginning too sort of gave off War Games vibes right away with
Mhm.
like them being like in the and actually when you first watch it, you're like, what is happening? This is not a Val Kilmer film, right? This isn't a comedy. And then you realize pretty quickly it is. But yeah, I mean, it was really at the heart of the height of the Cold War, 85 when it came out. So it was like right there. And a lot of movies have that feel from that. Maybe from like 82 to 87, you have some of that, but um, and maybe that's part of the nostalgia, which is sort of a weird thing to say because I think, for me growing up in that, it wasn't like super unusual because there was always this, are we going to go to war kind of feeling. I mean, and it was a
Right.
real thing. So this was really playing on what people's sort of fears really were.
I totally get that. And it's a different time back then too. Like because don't forget we had the Vietnam War, which was very bad. And
Mhm.
then you would go into this in the 80s and you're on the tip basically you have to basically tiptoe around everything because you're not sure what to expect during this era.
Right, and like especially like when you see the movie, and obviously that's a different film. Maybe I don't know if you reviewed it. We could talk about it because again, War Games is one of my favorite '80s films as well. But it's true. There's this sort of feeling, and there's also you're kind of almost lost because there's really nothing you can do. Like if we go to if we have a nuclear war, there's literally nothing you can do. We
Exactly.
can't, like as a citizen, and so it played on that a little bit, but it had such fun. the rest of the movie was such fun.
I can say that too. And so now that we talked about this nostalgically, now that we gave you a little bit of insight with this film on the tone of it, we're gonna break this thing down scene
Yeah,
by
let's
scene.
do it.
So, welcome back to Movies Lovers Night, where the popcorn always is always fresh. The takes are hotter than a laser powdered popcorn explosion, and the IQ points. Well, we're still looking for those. Today, we're teaming up with the Made for Movie TV podcast because when you're talking about a movie full of teenage geniuses, over the top science experiments, and Val Kilmer in peak chaotic cool mode, you need to team up with the experts, or at least a team that can spell laser. So, with that being said, today we're cracking open the classified files on Real Genius, the movie that proves the government really will steal your homework if it's good enough. So grab your bubblegum, put on your finest Hawaiian shirt, and don't forget to duck when the popcorn starts flying. It's time to find out if Real Geniuses is still a blast or just a science fair project gone wrong. So, scene one: the CIA has comfortably hired Professor Jerry Hathaway at Pacific Tech University to develop the power source for a crossbow, a laser weapon precise enough to commit illegal political assassinations from outer space. Hathaway uses his position to recruit brilliant scientists to do the work for him, diverting the CIA's funding into building his enormous house. So I want to say this: like you mentioned, the fact that we don't even get to see Val Kilmer in this at the very start of it, because you always see your main protagonist and stuff like
Yeah.
that in the start of the film. Not you don't get him until about maybe 10 minutes into the film.
Right.
So it's totally different than what I expected. I expected to see Val Kilmer right off the bat. Instead, you had this sci-fi kind of element to it out in space. And yes, the CGI might be a little off or whatever, but at the same time, you still get that threatening feeling of they want to build this weapon out in space. And basically all you have to do is take a laser pointer and you're gone.
Yeah.
And it just was a threatening thing. I could imagine seeing this on screen for the first time and be like, "Oh crap!"
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. And then of course, like you were saying, we don't meet Chris Knight, Val Kilmer until 10 minutes in because we of course meet Mitch, who is the 15-year-old prodigy. Jerry Hathaway goes to meet him and his parents at the science fair at his high school and tell him, hey, guess what? You're going to go to college. You're accepted, but you're also going to come at the Christmas break. Like we're letting you in early. And I thought about that, John, and I wondered, do you think it's because, so this movie was really on the cusp of where he became a star. So maybe when he actually started filming it, he wasn't as big of a star as he became because Top Gun hadn't come out yet. He obviously had not been Batman yet because I don't even think I think the Michael Keaton came out in 85, right? So I don't even think he had signed to do that yet. I can't remember. But it was it was after this movie came out. I think this is one of his first, Val Kilmer's first movies where he was like a star. He starred in it.
Actually, it was Top Gun that was the first one.
Really? Top Gun came before this?
Yeah, it's actually within the same year. You had Top Gun that came out this year in 85. You also had Real Genius that came out in 85. So he was getting ready to be on top of his game at this point.
Yeah. Well, that's what happened with Tom Cruise and The Outsiders, right? The Outsiders came out and then like some of Tom Cruise's biggest 80s films came out within a year of that. So we see that a lot, actually. It's kind of
just
fun.
Amazing on the growth that Val had during this time, though.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's clear in this movie that he had charisma.
Yes. That's the best way to put it.
Right.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, I mean, his character was so cool. He's like a genius, but he's not like a Sheldon Cooper genius, right? Not like a nerdy little dude. Mitch was more like that, but Chris Knight, Val Kilmer's character, was very suave. He was a ladies' man. He like knew how to work people. He knew he was like didn't take anything seriously. His character was so well written.
Exactly, because I was expecting him to be like Mitch, because it's like, oh, I get to meet my idol. I get to meet basically Stephen Hawking of this college, and then you find out is this laid back kid that doesn't care about anything because he's so smart to the point it's like, screw it. I'll just go on ahead and be this instead of being this dorky guy and with glasses and stuff. And
Yeah,
it's
he didn't want to overwork himself. He was tired. He was burned out.
right. I like that aspect of it of like you have Mitch who represents who he is, who Chris used to be.
Yeah.
And even Chris says it. He goes, "Kid, you remind me of myself whenever I first started here."
Right.
He goes, "But man, you got to go with the flow. You got to go on ahead and just say, you know what? Don't even worry about anything."
Yeah,
And
and it's like kind of what are the rules of writing? Like I think I've told you this, and maybe your audience knows, but I just finished a novel. I've been writing it for a couple of years. Finished it, sent it off to my mentor, and like one of the things he said a lot of the times when I worked with him was take a character and turn it on its head. So figure out a way to make that character not like all the other characters, and that's what they really did when they wrote Chris Knight because he's not like what you would expect a genius to be in any way, shape, or form. He had
no,
funny T-shirts on the whole time. He was just didn't take it seriously anymore.
he didn't. He was like, you know what? I know I'm good enough to actually pass and graduate college and stuff. So why stress myself out whenever I know I'm this smart? To the point it was like, you know what? I can do this blindfolded and I
Right,
don't have to worry about anything. So it's
right,
like him being all knowing about himself and
hmm
being sure of himself.
yeah,
And you know, you mentioned the part with the whole entire deal where you meet Mitch for the first time in the science fair. This is very different than what I expected because who would have thought that you would actually try to get this government person to hire a college dean to come
yeah,
over to the high school to try and recruit somebody else
yeah,
for this government project?
yeah.
And it's actually the perfect cover up if you think about it.
It was because Mitch had no idea. Chris didn't even have any idea. Neither one of them. Nobody had any idea. I don't even think Kent really knew what was going on. I think he was just trying so hard to suck up to Hathaway that I don't even think he was aware, even though he was kind of a jerk anyway. But like he really duped everybody.
Exactly, because think of it, it's the perfect cover up. Mitch is a minor, so if
Mhm.
anything goes wrong, you can blame Mitch for things going wrong.
No culpability. And in the 80s, I don't know what the laws are like today, but in the 80s, they really didn't do much to a 15-year-old, no matter what you did.
Right.
So
But
they could say he did it, and then he'd be like off scot free.
right, but also too, you also have Chris, who's a little bit older than him, that would actually incriminate him even more because he could
Right.
actually put the blame on him. So it's actually the perfect government's cover up for that.
Yeah.
But the thing that I thought that was really interesting is the fact that this dean is so famous. This scientist is so famous to the point where it's like, hey, I have a question. How do you do? What do you do to your hair to make it the way it moves? And he's just getting tired of that same snick over and over again. It's like no one understands me. No one is even thinking about science or anything. The only one that cares about science is Mitch, and Mitch's parents is also the same way, who sees a celebrity
Yeah.
scientist. And I thought to myself, what adult would actually go on ahead and geek out over a scientist? But then again, if it has sex appeal, you might actually get a reaction.
Right. I
Yeah.
mean, and apparently he was supposed to have sex appeal. I didn't get that, but personally, but did you think like he had his own TV show, remember? And I thought
Right.
that still really rings today. Although maybe today they would have he'd have a reality show where they'd follow him around teaching or whatever. But I
Right.
mean, it was something that kind of has held up over time, like the kind of like strange celebrity that happens in the United States. Like
He was
there's
like
this
Bill Nye the Science Guy before
right,
Bill Nye the Science Guy.
right. I mean, I was trying to think if there was like a really famous like scientist that had their own sort of TV show back then, but not really. I mean, I guess what's his name? Neil Tyson Negrassi, or I forget
Yeah,
how you.
that's the
So he was probably somewhat famous back then. He's been around a long time. Stephen Hawking was famous, of course, but other than that, there weren't a lot of scientists that were really like. Now we did celebrities, scientist celebrities were astronauts. That was a really big deal in the 80s because
okay.
the space program was huge. It would had exploded, and and then of course we had the space shuttle disaster. But
Right.
my point is that there were scientists that were famous in in ways like Hathaway was trying to be. Although kind of strange, like he's trying to put on this government, he's trying to make these people make this laser, and yet he's on TV. Like he's not kind of laying low to do this sort of undercover get other people
Exactly.
to do work for me kind of thing.
It's like I got to make myself have an appearance to make it look like that I'm actually legit, even though I'm not legit.
I think that's why I think he also really liked himself.
Yeah, he did. He was self-centered. He was way self-centered.
Yeah, his character was awful. I loved him. I mean, all the characters were written really well in this film. They were very true to who they were. Like whoever wrote them really fleshed them out, and they were all really well thought out. Even though it was a comedy, like a lot of times you don't get that, right? You just get this sort of stereotypical person that makes jokes, and that isn't the case in this movie at all.
I feel like that with Val Kilmer's character Chris has a lot of layers to him,
right?
Because there's a relatability of the fact, yes, I'm a geek, I'm a nerd, I'm just like you, Mitch, but at the same time, I'm this jock, that can party and throw parties together, and just relax and chillax for a little bit and forget the fact that I'm even a nerd,
right? So, and he did have a heart, which we find out later, which I'm sure we'll get to. I don't want to bring up anything too early, but we find out later he does have a heart because he does have to lift Mitch up a little bit later on in the movie.
Exactly. And then we also have Hathaway recruits high school student Mitch Taylor, a budding genius in laser physics. Mitch is roomed with Chris Knight, a legend in the National Physics Club, and one of Mitch's idols. Mitch's ideal of Chris is shattered, however, when Chris turns out to be more of a slacker than a hardworking student. Meanwhile, Hathaway hopes Mitch will encourage Chris to straighten up his act, and that their two explanational minds can develop a proper power source for a crossbow. Mitch also befriends Jordan Cochran, a hyperactive insomniac student for whom he gradually develops romantic feelings for. So we're introduced to a lot of characters, and also too, you're expecting this dorm room to be like really nerdy, very clean, and it's like it looks like Queens, New York in the 80s. It's like
a hot mess.
Yes, it's a hot mess of a dorm. It's not clean. It is the opposite of what I was expecting. Just as Mitch is also expecting something a lot cleaner, probably, and it's totally different. And then whenever he gets his clothes taken, and he doesn't know where his clothes are or anything, and he sees this guy coming out of the closet, he doesn't even know what that's about. So the whole entire time he sees this one dude coming out of the closet, and then he's also trying to unpack, and he even asks Chris, he goes, "Who's the guy in the closet?" He goes, "What guy in the closet?" The guy that just came out. He goes, "I don't know what you're talking about." He goes, "Where's my clothes at? I was trying to put it in the closet." "Why were you going to try and put your clothes in the closet?" "Because that's where they go." But I like that whole entire deal of a fish out of water, because that's what Mitch is.
Yes.
And he doesn't know quite what he thinks of his idol. It's like, don't meet your heroes because it's not who you think they are.
Right.
But in this case, it's like, this is who I looked up to.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds you of summer school, where you actually have the teacher who's really hip and stuff like that. That's what this is Val Kilmer reminded me of, that teacher, because he's just so chill like that.
Mark Harmon's character, wasn't it?
Right.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't think of that, but again, like, when you talk about sort of comedies from the 80s, there's sort of that super suave kind of character that they usually have. I guess, and like I said, I think Hathaway was supposed to be someone that was also like suave, because I think, or whatever, because he was famous and whatever, but his character was he was a bad guy, so it didn't count. But yeah, I mean, I liked how they did that in the dorm room, so we got to meet all these people really quickly, which makes sense when you're in a dorm room, right?
Right.
How else do you do that? So you meet Jordan, who is also one of my favorite characters of the 80s. I loved her. I think maybe that's why I like this film so much too, because she just was so bizarre.
She was bizarre, but also very straightforward of who she is.
Yes.
It's like, "Hi, my name is Jordan,"
sleep.
and right,
I never sleep.
It's like me who has ADHD, who cannot sleep.
Right, and then she shows up with a sweater that she's like, I knit this for you last night," and he's like, Thanks.
And even when he's peeing, though, even when he's in the bathroom, because he's not used to sharing a dormitory with females either,
Yeah.
because he's thinking this is a men's bathroom, but it's for everybody.
Yeah.
And she just busts up in there.
Yeah.
Is like, hey, how you doing, Mitch?
Yeah. That was also kind of a novelty too back in the 80s. That's kind of when like co-ed dorms existed. I actually lived in a co-ed dorm, but it was like our tower was women and then the other tower was men, but we still had like shared a common areas and stuff. So that wasn't like a super that was fairly new, and parents didn't like that. I don't want my kid going to college and sharing a space with the other sex. And it's like, okay, whatever, you were boring in college. But so but yeah, I mean, I think Mitch was very what's the word? He was sheltered.
He
I
was.
don't think because he had spent all of his youth already just studying.
Well, think of it like this, though, Beth, though, too. He's 15 years old. He hasn't really experienced any kind of lifestyles or anything like that like Chris has. He's been a lot more into his dorm and stuff like that. He's been there for probably 3 or 4 years.
Yep.
And all Mitch knows is high school. And that's it.
Yep.
So this is very outside of his comfort level.
Mm-hmm.
So seeing stuff like this is like, oh, okay, I guess this is where we share the bathroom. Okay, this is something new that I haven't experienced before.
Yeah, and I think the casting was good because he really fit that character, his acting and his sort of style and look and whatever. They did a really good job turning him into this sort of sheltered kid who hasn't really been around girls and hasn't really been around parties and has really only spent his time studying.
I can definitely see that. And then Kent is one of the douchebags that I can't stand.
Yeah,
yeah. It kind of reminds me of Philip Seymour Hoffman's character from Patch Adams, where Patch is basically the comedy aspect of it, and Seymour Hoffman's like the stuck-up person in his dorm. And that's what Kent reminds me of. He reminds me, if this was a prequel to Patch Adams, Kent would be Seymour Hoffman to me.
I agree. I hadn't thought about that, but once you said that, I totally agree.
But I just think that the chemistry between Val and him was really good.
Yeah.
And Mitch and Chris, I thought that those two dynamics worked. Nothing about this felt forced. The dialogue felt fresh. I enjoyed them seeing them on screen together.
Yeah, I do too. And I don't think the actor who played Mitch, I don't know if you looked him up. I don't know if I did on IMDb, but I don't know if I don't think he's still acting. I think he might have retired from it because I don't remember seeing him. But he's certainly not a household name if he's still acting. He didn't go on to such fame as Val Kilmer did.
Exactly. I don't see him acting in anything recently either.
Yeah.
Because whenever I looked up his IMDb and everything, I don't see anything from him.
Yeah. You know who else he reminded me of in a way? It was the movie Weird Science, not Anthony Michael Hall's character, but the other guy. It was kind of this, they were similar, like kind of
I get what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying? Kind of quiet and smart and quiet and sort of gentle people. That's kind of when I watched it, and I thought to myself, I'm surprised they actually didn't cast the kid from Weird Science, whose name I forget, and I shouldn't because I love that movie too. I'm surprised they didn't cast him in that movie.
I'm kind of glad that they did like a little bit of an unknown.
Yeah, so. I agree. Or maybe they couldn't get him because he was pretty famous by then. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know what kind of budget this movie had, but it probably wasn't a huge one.
It's only an $8 million budget.
Yeah, even back then that was pretty small, I think.
Yeah, $8 million budget, and by then that other actor might have actually became a household name to the point where it's like, well, I want at least $15 million to play this character.
Yeah. So I'm going to assume that Val Kilmer signed up for this movie before Top Gun.
Yeah, because so we actually reviewed his very first movie, which was Top Secret.
Yeah,
so I wanted to go back and backtrack that for everyone. I made a mistake on that, and then it was after that he did a couple of ABC after school specials.
Okay.
Then after that it was Real Genius. Then after that it was Top Gun.
Yeah.
And then he just kept on climbing. Murders in the Rue Morgue. The Man Who Broke 1,000 Chains. Willow. Mm-hmm. His record just keeps on getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
You should
I
go
don't
through.
think, though, John, if I recall correctly, Willow did not do well. I
No,
think it was a big disappointment, but I think today it's a cult classic. Like I think
it's a
today
cult
it's
classic.
got, yeah, I think people today love it, but when it came out, it did not do well. But of
I
course, Tom
remember.
Holland, yeah,
But just seeing how where he came from, starting off from just doing a spoof movie, then
yeah.
climbing the ladder. Even though he had a bump in the road with Willow, he just
Yeah.
kept on going until he got even bigger.
And what year did his Batman come out? Do you remember? 80,
Batman, I
89?
want to say, was like 97, I believe.
Oh, you think it was that late? I thought it was like in the early 90s,
No,
maybe, but
95. 95.
okay, 95. That makes sense. Actually, I think the first Batman, I might be wrong, it might have come out in 87 or 88. So that
89.
makes sense. Okay. Okay. See,
That
it's
was my
hard to
first
remember.
movie.
I'm an old lady now, John. I can't
It's
remember.
okay. Batman, the very first Batman was my first movie that I ever seen in theaters,
Oh,
which was in
really?
'89. So
Oh,
that's how I remember that movie.
that you were so little.
Yeah, but I still remember because I love Michael Keaton as Batman.
I
That's my
know. I have to say, you and I agree on this, or we've talked about this. Michael Keaton is the best Batman. Val Kilmer is my second favorite Batman. I have to say,
yes.
and I didn't. This is a different talk altogether. I didn't love Clooney as Batman, but that's a whole different conversation. But still, I loved Michael Keaton as Batman.
Me too. But let's go in. We got this other scene now too,
Yeah.
where Anne Hathaway's graduate students, and today reports Mitch for attending a pool party with Chris instead of working on the laser. Hathaway lamb blasts Mitch, who breaks down and tearfully calls his parents. Kent secretly records the call like a douchebag and
Yeah.
uses the recording to humiliate Mitch. As Mitch begins packing to leave, Chris explains the pressure of school and burdens of being highly intelligent, and by relating the history of genius and former Pacific Tech student Lazo Holyfield. Holyfield suffered a nervous breakdown when he discovered his creation were being used to kill, and now lives hidden in the university's tunnels, accessed from beneath Chris and Mitch's closet. Chris, fearing the same could happen to him, learning to lighten up and enjoy life. Mitch agrees to stay, and they exact revenge on Kent, disabling his car, a 1972's Victorian DS, and reassembling it in his dorm.
that scene was so funny because he's like, "What? How did my car get here?" But also with Laszlo, because so what happens is Laszlo's living, like you said, in the closet, and then Mitch finally figures out how to figures out like there's a trick door. So he gets in there, and then there's like this weird cart system, which I would have been terrified. I'd be like, "How do we know this is going to work?" To get him down, and you kind of see Laszlo in his like setting, like where he lives, and it's kind of loud with the there's like a printer thing going off, and
Right.
it's just it's a very strange scene, and you're kind of like, oh dear, Laszlo. But he's such a great character, and he
He's a
kind of
mystery character.
right, he's very much a mystery, but you also find out later that he's the one that sort of like, why, you're building this laser. Have you thought about why? And I don't think he meant to like alarm them, but I also think he meant like they need to know what they're doing. And it actually kind of had the Sheldon Cooper vibes. Do you ever watch Big Bang Theory?
Oh, I love Big Bang Theory.
Okay, so when they start working
Yeah.
for the government and then they kind of make that same realization, part of me wonders if they sort of borrowed that storyline from this movie.
I
Because
wouldn't be
it's so
surprised.
similar. It's so similar in so many ways. Whenever I saw that season, that's all I could think about was Real Genius. I'm like, that happened in the movie, So
Because don't forget, Leonard was playing around with the laser.
right,
Him
right,
and his girlfriend.
right. That laser kind of came and went in that series, but yes, I mean it's the same thing. Kind of the laser. Obviously, they were doing different things for different applications, but they also didn't know exactly what they were doing. They knew they were working for the government. They didn't know what they were building. So,
Right. And what
and
I
that's
got out
kind of
of
what
that,
happens. Yeah.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
But I like that whole entire deal of, close the closet door, because he knows there's a secret passageway, but he doesn't know how there's a secret passageway. So he closes the closet door. All of a sudden it says, "You're here." And then it looks like a scene from a roller coaster.
Yeah.
The way it sits, and he, like you said, he's going down through the walls of this campus, and you finally get to see the guy live where he lives. And you're right about this, though, Beth. It's like he's not trying to discredit them. It's like you need to question why you're doing the things you're doing.
Yeah.
Because you guys are innocent on what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I think because of the fact he's a grown man and he's actually seeing things through, it's like everybody's seeing each other through each other's lenses in this movie.
Right. That's a good point. That's a great point.
And he's like, look, I used to be naive and young like you. And I never questioned why I was working on certain things. I would just go on ahead and do it because I was smart. But just because I'm smart, it doesn't mean that it's right.
Yeah.
So you need to question your own inabilities of why you're doing this.
Yeah.
And so this whole entire time they're working on this laser. There's a montage of them working on it over and over again. They could never get it right.
Totally 80s is the montage, baby. Totally
Yes.
80s montage.
But I also like the pool party scene too.
Yeah.
I like the pool party scene. And I also like how finally Mitch is just relaxing finally, and then you have douchebag going on ahead and telling on him.
Right. Yeah, I mean, because I think like at some point Chris is just burned out. He doesn't want to do it anymore. And then he's sort of forced into it. Like, you need to do this or you're going to not graduate. Right. And Mitch, I don't think anybody's really questioning enough what Hathaway wants them to do it for. And I think that's what happens. I think they're so smart, but they're kind of dumb too. Right. Like they probably were like, oh, we should have seen this coming. Big bad conspiracy theory. But they never really did until Laszlo was like, hey. But then there's that funny scene where he's like, Chris is on the verge of failing Hathaway's class, and he's like, I've got to study or whatever. So Laszlo comes over and he's holding this big box of stuff. And he's like, oh, yeah, I memorized every single exam Hathaway ever had. He, like, I think hacked into the computer system, whatever. And they're like, oh, is that it? He's like, no, these are sweepstakes. I figure if I send in X amount that, you know, I'm going to win. What did he say? 80% of the prizes, including was it the bike or the car, or whatever? It was so cute because he's like, no, these are my. So for those of you who remember these kinds of sweepstakes where you filled them out and you put a stamp on it and you sent them in and then nobody ever won. I mean,
no, it was just a waste of stamps.
Yeah, you never heard of anybody. Actually, my dad did that. He did the Publishers Clearinghouse.
My mom did the same thing. I remember that big, huge sticker book that they would send you, and they were looking stick. I never understood it.
No, I didn't either, and I don't think anybody ever really won that, John. But my dad loved that thing. When it was time for that, we had the sticker book, and he'd like fill out the little cards, and he loved that stuff. So that was a real thing. Like winning prizes was a big deal. I don't know anybody who ever won because I don't think anybody ever really did, but
I don't think so either. It was just them collecting stamps and licking stamps and then sending off stamps. That's what
And then you had to pay stamps to send the stamps.
Right. They knew how to get you. They knew how to.
They weren't dummies. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, so there you have this sort of all of this stuff going on. In the middle of that, Mitch burns out a little bit. And Chris like lifts him up. But one of my favorite scenes that kind of happens when all this weird stuff is happening is when Jordan makes the ice in the dorm room. And and they're playing around and they're like sledding and they're trying to have a lot of fun before whatever this is she created, because they don't really so I don't know how to describe it. It's like the dorm room is, or the hallway for sure. And I think it fills into some of the rooms. Yeah, literally fills with ice so they can ice skate. And Jordan was sledding. She's trying to beat her some kind of score. She was trying to do something.
It kind of looks like one of those cartoons you would see. Okay, let's light a cherry bomb and see if I can ski down this slope really fast.
Right. That's kind of what I think she was doing, but she's trying to do it before it like dissipates because it's made of some kind of gas, I think. They don't really say exactly, and I don't know if they knew, whatever. But it was just such a fun scene because everybody's kind of just really like having a great time. And I think they're in California, right? So maybe they don't even see snow that often where they are.
Yeah, they're in California. And so therefore they don't even see any snow or anything like that. So you can see why they would want to go on ahead and do that.
exactly. And so that was a really fun scene because it kind of lifted, kind of moved some of this. So I think part of what we should mention is that there's a lot of really funny lines. We're not talking about a drama, we're talking about a comedy. But
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of really funny lines, but it's kind of a serious storyline. So there's
I
like
hear,
these things that happen, like the party with the girls and the pool and that kind of thing that you had just mentioned.
but this is another thing I like over at whenever you go on ahead and see Chris and he winds up going over to the dean's house. He goes, and it happens to be this the general's daughter, I believe. He
Yeah.
goes, ever seen a body like this before in your life? David Decker goes, she happens to be my daughter. Oh,
Yeah.
then I guess you have.
I think I'm not 100% sure, but I think that girl was the gal who started Valley Girl
Okay.
with Nicolas Cage, which was also a pretty big 80s movie. I didn't care for it myself, but and obviously this would have been much earlier in her career because she only had two lines. She was in two scenes, maybe. She wasn't in it that much, but yeah, she's pretty unforgettable. Like her face, she's like her features. She's really like you remember her if you saw her, and yeah, but that was really funny when he went over there and that girl. And, yeah, it was really
Yeah, and then there was like a penis joke that was involved in it.
Yeah.
And my wife's like, that was random. I was like, I thought it was funny.
Yeah, there were some weird kind of rando things that kind of
Right.
like Revenge of the Nerds vibes. You got a little bit from. Did you ever see Revenge of the Nerds?
I've seen the first one. I haven't seen it in years.
Yeah.
To be honest with you,
Yeah, they have a lot of this. They have a lot of similarities with the jokiness and sort of, I don't know, the us versus them thing kind of thing. They weren't that similar, but just some of those weird jokes kind of reminded me of Revenge of the Nerds.
but yeah, we also talked about the whole car bit where he goes, "Hey Kent, there's your car. Kent, you know you're not supposed to be to park that on campus. You've gone too far for this time, Knight." And Chris Knight goes, "I had to help." He goes, "You, huh? Well, you won't get away with this. Dr. Hathaway's going to hear all about this. You'll rule the day. Rule the day. Who talks like that?" So it kind of has like an Inspector Gadget kind of feel to it with that. Everything feels like a cartoon. With the ice, with the dialogue, within the dorm rooms and stuff like that.
What happens at the end?
Yes. But you can't help but get invested in the story.
Yeah, it's true. It's so great at this point. I mean, and one thing I forgot now. So you had mentioned early when you first started talking about this movie. I'm not sure. I don't even know if it ever went to DVD. I think it probably came out on VHS, but it didn't stream for a very, very long time. And in fact, I don't remember seeing it on TV. So I think for a long time this film just wasn't available. So I think that might be why, like, a lot of people haven't seen it or heard of it. But when you were talking about that earlier, and when you first started, I was like, oh yeah, I think because it just wasn't available. But I think during COVID I think I saw it again. But so my point is, John, I do have one actually, that I hadn't seen this movie for a really long time in between when I saw it back in the 80s and now. And I forgot how fast everything moved. Like
it's very fast paced.
Yeah, it is not. There's no scenes that bog it down.
And it's an hour and 42-minute movie, but they give you a lot within the hour and 42, and you don't even feel the runtime or anything.
No, not at all. Because like I forgot how early on, not early, but like when Mitch gets burned out and he wants to go home, that's pretty early on in the movie. And in my brain, it was way later.
Right. I can see that though. I can see that, it would be a little bit later, but still I'm happy that it came into that because of the fact that you have that dialogue between Chris. It's like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
Because I want to leave. I'm being tortured by this ball bag here. He doesn't want me here. I can't, I'm being made fun of, and everybody's over here busting my balls, and everybody's laughing at me. Why do I want to be in a place that I don't even feel wanted? I feel like I'm back in high school all over again.
Right.
And then that's when Chris is like, look, you got to reinvent the wheel. You've got to go on ahead and reinvent yourself. You have to get yourself out there. You cannot let these people defeat you on who you are.
Right. But
So
then they get their sweet, sweet revenge on Kent.
I love what they do to Kent and stuff. They end up making basically doing the voice thing of God. Kent, and it happens like 2 or 3 times, but the bit doesn't get stale to me. Usually I get tired
No.
when I'm like, okay, I get it's the same schnick. But with this, I didn't feel that way. I felt like I was invested into these characters enough to where I'm like, these are kids, so they're gonna think how a kid thinks.
Yeah.
And I still found it funny
Yeah.
whenever they're doing it to him.
And then when they set that up, when they go to, so what they do is they put like a, what would you call it? Like a microphone thing in
Yeah,
Kent's wearing braces. So they knock them out, but they do this like sort of super spy thing, right? Where they're like
right.
running in the night and they're like jumping on the ground. So you got like this feeling. I think there was like some super spy music too. And it's just funny because then Jordan puts gas in the dorm room and um, knocks Kent out so they can get this speaker thing up in his teeth. And he's even looking like he's like looking around trying to find it because now he's hearing voices that Mitch is doing, and it's like,
Right. It's like the sound effect thing that they use, like a voiceover or something.
Yeah, it's
Um,
funny.
Basically, I can use the same setting for my mic and do it that way though too, if I
Yeah,
wanted to. But
right.
but you mentioned a good point though too. Like this is not even streaming anywhere. I had to rent this movie on YouTube, but they do have it on 4K for anyone that's into physical media. They also have this if you want it for $50. They have it on Blu-ray,
Oh, geez.
and then
So it must have come out at some point on DVD, but I don't know when.
I don't know either, but I do know that they have a 4K for like $21.99 on Amazon. And then of course, if you're looking for the DVD, it's $69.50.
Yeah,
So you're better off with the 4K if you have a 4K player.
that's really expensive for a DVD, especially because nobody has DVD players anymore.
Even though I still do my collecting, but still,
Actually, no,
you're
you know
right.
what? I don't mean because I actually do have a DVD player because we watch a lot of DVDs for the podcast because a lot of the movies that we watch aren't streaming. So we do have a DVD, and I have a lot of DVDs. So I'm not making fun of anybody who collects them. I'm just saying, in the general sense, people don't have them on.
I get
for
what
those of us who do.
right. I get what you're saying. I didn't take no offense to it or anything.
But I actually
But
think
yeah,
I spent less on my DVD player than it would cost to buy this movie on DVD.
exactly. I'm not going to break the
$50.
piggy bank to buy a regular DVD. I'll go in and buy the 4K because it's actually $21.
Yeah.
So I'll buy it for $21.
Yeah.
But then we have Hathaway. Hathaway is actually angry about the still incomplete project, and Chris's attitude informs Chris that he intends to prevent him from earning a degree, blackmailing him and give him a cover job. Originally promised to Kent instead. Chris is disheartened, and Mitch must use Chris's same argument to convince him to stay. The two create a new laser, but Kent sabotages it, causing it to explode, though intentionally disobedient. The incident inspires Chris to design and build a 6 megawatt exclaimer laser, which burns a hole through the campus when a test fired. Hathaway reserves his position, giving Chris a degree and the job. As Chris and Mitch celebrate, Holyfield arrives and informs him that with certain modifications, the laser could be used as a weapon. Panic Chris returns to the lab to find the laser gun as well as Kent's project, a mirror and a track system, which together can weaponize Chris's laser.
Yes. So that is sort of the beginning of the end of the movie, right? Where now they're like, we got to figure out what to do. They took this laser. It's gone.
Right. They finally fixed it. They finally got everything that they needed, and now it's gone. But also, too, you also have the douchebag that winds up destroying it. And then during the testing, you have Chris taking the test. And of course, the douchebag was already the last person to come into the room. So you should have known something was up whenever he was like the last one to come in. Mm-hmm. And I like how Chris goes, he ends up turning his test and he goes, I'm going to ace this. I got this ace.
Yeah.
So
it's true. Yeah. It's good. And then they have to figure out like what to do now. What do they do? So they kind of get together as a sort of as a a cohesive group to um,
Basically, sneak into a military
yes.
base to try and take this thing down, take
And
down the
Mitch
laser.
has that mustache. They literally they talk their way in. They're like at the military base trying to get in, and they have Jordan and I don't remember is Laszlo with them at the time, but Jordan, they're on the outside trying to like help them. They're all in communication. They're like, oh, we don't have our pass or whatever, and they let him in, and this other military guy comes to the gate, and he's like, just you're supposed to look out for anything weird, and the guy's like, okay. After they just let Mitch and Chris in, it was so dumb, and Mitch has this stupid mustache on and makes him look younger somehow.
Well, I have to say, Chris actually plays it off really smooth. The other one is sweating bullets, and he looks like Screech from Saved by the Bell. If Screech would have actually grown a mustache, he would look like Screech.
My podcast partner lives in the same town he lived in for a bit before he passed away, and she would see him at the grocery store, the guy who played Screech. He would be around town. So anyway, that just made me laugh. That's hilarious because it's true. So they go in there to modify where the location that the laser is going to point when the CIA finally decides to do their whole we're going to use it for bad now kind of thing. So it's just a really funny scene because then Hathaway comes in when the CIA is there. Mitch and Chris like get away, they're gone. They do their thing, they get out. And of course it's high tension because it always is in a movie. And then Hathaway's like looking around at like what they're doing, and he finds what is it that it's on the ground? It's like a piece
like
of
a little
laser.
microchip or something that is supposed to be in there.
Yeah,
but they switched up the microchip for I think it might have something to do with the GPS.
Something like that, but Hathaway realizes something is wrong because his eyes are like, and they're like, "Is something wrong?" He's like, "No, not at all." And he puts it like in his pocket. Yeah, we're good. We don't know. We don't need that piece. Who needs that? Yeah. We don't know.
It's like having that extra piece to a swing set. It's like, nah, I don't need that extra piece. We're good. But, but I like how he knows, Hathaway actually knows that something's up. And he happens to look like in a horror movie, looking around, and he doesn't see them because they're also sneaking away as he's also walking away. And they actually duck just in time to see, to where Hathaway doesn't even see them. But you also have this other thing with Mitch, though it's not Mitch, but what's the douchebag's name? I keep on calling him douchebag. Kent.
Yeah.
Where remember when he goes, "This is God again." Yeah. Have you been touching yourself?
Have you been touching yourself?
Were you even playing with yourself?
Kent, stop touching yourself.
Right. He goes, "It is God." And then, but my other favorite thing is, like, you could definitely tell that he's like lying. Goes, "Have you been touching yourself?" No, and his hands are slowly moving to that.
And then funny.
It was fun. And then he tells him to go to to Hathaway's house.
Yes.
And he'll give him a sign.
Right. He's gonna give him a sign. So now it's very early the next morning, and Chris, Mitch, Jordan are at the house. Kent's sort of working his way to the house. Now, I guess we should have probably mentioned too, like you were saying, they build this house, but there's like this sort of running thing where he's doing this enormous amount of work on this old, I don't know if he's building it or renovating. Either way, it's a huge house. Mm-hmm. But there's also kind of this running joke with this dog that keeps coming and running over, and Hathaway's like, get out of here. So, who do they bring? Is it the dean or like the college?
Yeah, he brings one of the associates from the college because remember, Mitch, when Mitch first arrives, he goes, "Make sure you check your references." So I thought to myself right then and there, I'm like, this guy's going to be a perfect, an important person, key role later on, probably. Yeah. He says, "Check your references."
Yeah.
And so he winds up bringing him over, and him and Chris are both dressed in like deer
jammies.
Yes, and the slippers.
It's so funny. Yeah, it's so funny. They got the slippers on, and the guys in it, and he's like, "Why are we here?" And then kind of like nothing happens. And then at some point, Laszlo comes through, and he had won they had a camper. He won a camper, and he
Right.
met. So there's this woman who had been. She was trying to like, I guess, beg one of the smarties, right? Because she kind of hit on everybody. All like,
Right, because remember, she also hit on Mitch, and then
right,
Mitch, like, because remember, he winds up confronting the girl that he's in love with.
right,
He's like, "Look, I'm not in love with this girl."
yeah,
She goes, "Why are you all sweaty?" He goes, "I didn't do what you think I did."
right.
He goes, "What are you talking about?" Because I don't want to go ahead and make it with her. I want you.
Yeah, and then they kind of kiss a little bit. It's a PG
Right.
movie, so there's nothing. But yeah, this woman is trying to, and I think it's, I don't remember if she did it in the movie or they just talked about it, but she did hit on Chris at some point too. So, because like they're like one of the 10 greatest minds in the country or something. So she just really, for whatever reason, wants a smart guy. So she and Laszlo come by, they've gotten married, and then they leave on their, on the, some camping trip or whatever, in their new camp or whatever. So, do you want to tell how it ends, or shall I?
Okay, I'll let you break that down. But also, too, we also have something else that happened before that, though, too. Chris and them winds up breaking into Hathaway's house, and
Oh,
we don't know
yes.
what they did. So it's a mystery to us, just as it is also a mystery to the douchebag that's going to be to
Kent.
Mitch. Yeah,
Yeah,
who?
Kent.
Yeah, to Kent. So it's
Right.
just as
Yeah.
mystery to us as it is to Kent.
Yeah.
So we don't even know what to expect.
No.
So go on ahead, break down the scene. I'll let you
Okay,
go on
so
ahead.
they're all kind of standing there, not too close to the house because they're like, don't get too close. And so we have no idea what's going to happen. The CIA, the government, they turn on the laser, and the laser ends up, what they did was change the GPS to go to Hathaway's house. So the laser now goes into Hathaway's house, and what they've done is they've put popcorn in his house. So as this laser's going off, the popcorn's heating up, and his entire house fills with popcorn, and then it spills out all over into the neighborhood. Children come running with buckets and bags and uh, wagons and everything to get this popcorn, and that's kind of how the movie ends, right? With this joyful,
Right.
yay, they did it, 80s kind of feeling. But Hathaway comes home, and that dog comes by, and he's like, get out of here. But what I read, John, I don't remember if this came up in my Facebook feed, or because I didn't do a lot of research for this movie before we talked about it tonight, but they couldn't, for whatever reason, get it right with like CGI or special effects. They used real popcorn.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that
Okay.
was actual popcorn that they used to
And
fill
I like
this
how they
house.
did that though. They used like a giant sized old fashioned foil popcorn
It was
thing
like
that you would
Jiffy Pop, or is that what it was
right.
called? The Jiffy Pop,
Yeah, it was a
the
Jiffy popcorn.
yeah,
And that was something that I haven't seen before where you have a laser heating up the popcorn element to
yeah,
this and you're making this huge popcorn. And at first I'm thinking, okay, what kind of destruction can popcorn do? Because remember they tell Scott to get out of the house
yeah.
and yeah, and I'm like, why? I said, I understand why, because it's going to put a hole in the house.
Yeah.
Then you find out it's popcorn. I'm like, wait, where's the danger in popcorn? And all of a sudden you see the popcorn breaking the glass. I'm
Windows,
like,
yeah.
so I'm like, okay, so how do you explain that to State Farm whenever they try to do your
Yeah.
insurance claim?
And also
But
probably not safe for the children to be eating either, now that I think about it.
it's radiation. But then again, though, Beth, you're going to be heating it up in the microwave too. So,
Right, right.
but still,
Well, I mean,
but
back then that was like microwaves weren't that old at that point. People did think they were like radiation's gonna, cause all these problems, whatever. And I don't think that's been the case, but yeah. So it's such a feel good movie, and the ending is just so fun because of that popcorn. But I had no idea that they had to actually use popcorn, and I don't know if they did it on. I don't know how they, you know, they did it like on a smaller scale house, that kind of thing. I didn't look too far into exactly how they did it. So, but it was
right.
fun. It was such a fun ending too, because they got, you know, they got revenge.
Yes, they got the revenge they wanted. It wrapped up really good. And like you
Yeah.
said, it's a feel good movie. You'll laugh with everything in it. Um, Matter of fact, I did a little bit of research with it, but it's like the liquid Nigerian coins have baffled viewers for many years and are considered by many to be a goof. However, the very first draft of the script shows that it wasn't an error. The thermos contains liquid hydrogen, which in turn contains a column of super cooled CO2 dry ice, which is what Chris uses in the vending machine.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yes, the dry ice and the vending machine to get his it was coffee he got, right?
Right. It's for the
Yeah,
coffee.
yeah. That's funny because when I was in college, we weren't that smart. We just took quarters and put them in the. So back then, I don't know if machines at like laundromat and stuff still do this today, but you could put quarters in and you push the quarters in and they would go into the machine and your washing machine would start. Well, I had a boyfriend who was kind of smart and he would wrap the quarters in string and put them in, and then somehow that triggered it. But when he would pull the them quarters back out with string.
Ah, I never seen that movie before.
No,
That's pretty
no,
cool.
no, it wasn't a movie. It was like my
No.
boyfriend
I
really,
said
yeah.
move. I haven't seen
Oh
that movie
yeah.
before.
No, I had no idea that you could do that, but he taught me. So I probably just admitted that I broke the law in college, but I was broke and I needed my quarters.
I think it's fair. I think
The
it's fair
college
use.
got enough of my money. They didn't need all the
Exactly.
money.
They can actually they can use somebody else's dollar to actually be the machines at that.
Yeah, I've often wondered like if they were like, why are we never making any money on these machines? Are people not using them? Because everybody did it. Once like he taught everybody how to do it, of course you're gonna do it.
Exactly. Uh, we also have when Holyfield sends a large number of entries to the Frito-Lay contest. He is mirroring the actions of Caltech students Steve Klein, Dave Novok, and Barry Medell, who in 1974 used a similar strategy to win a McDonald's sweepstakes.
Oh,
The entries came to roughly 1/5 of the total entries, and them won them a station wagon, $3,000 cash, and 1,500 in food gift certificates. And nod to the accomplishment is also mirrored in the fact that Laszlo is frequently seen carrying food in a McDonald's bag in his early
oh,
scenes.
that's funny. I mean, you always just think that that's kind of product placement, which was really common. But oh, that's funny. I don't remember hearing about that. But I mean, I would have only been a child, like 5 when that happened. But I'm not surprised that happened. I think they have laws probably for that reason now against like fraud against that kind of thing. So
Right.
that's fun. That's
But I heard
fun.
that story before. I just didn't know it was used for this movie. So I thought that
Yeah,
was kind of cool.
yeah. I don't think I heard of it before, but I mean, I probably have. It sounds like somewhere out there familiar.
So, with that being said, now that I talked about this non-nostalgically, I'm gonna give this at least an 8.5 out of 10. I really enjoyed it. I really thought that Val Kilmer does a really good job of bringing the comedy. The characters are relatable. Nothing really felt like it just dragged or anything. Yeah, I would have to say it's a solid movie. I definitely enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too. Like I said, it's a 10 for me. I can't take the nostalgia out of this movie for me, the feeling of that, and I really enjoyed it. And I mean, I've been telling you we need to do this movie for so long. So I'm glad we finally did because it's
Too.
been so fun to talk about.
I'm glad that we did it as well because I think if I was able to watch this at like a younger age, I would have the nostalgia. But because of the fact that I haven't seen this until
Oh
now as
yeah,
an adult
yeah,
and everything, that's why I have it like it as an 8.5. But I totally understand why you have it as a 10. It's very relatable. It's
yeah,
funny. It's a feel good movie. It has a lot of heart to it. And
yeah,
yeah, I would actually recommend this to anybody that has kids or, just wanting something just to sit around for the family. So
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it's still relatable. I mean, obviously it's not like today, but I think as far as like it's held up over time. And there isn't anything super like sometimes you hit 80s movies and there's things that just do not translate well at all. We've seen that in some of John Hughes movies, as a matter of fact. But this one, it's just not really offensive in any way. The only thing I thought was maybe like we don't really know how old Jordan is, and she's with a 15-year-old. So that might have been a little wonky, but she could have been 15 too. They never
right.
say, and she was super smart. So Let's hope.
Exactly. Cross his fingers and toes. But still, it worked for the time and it worked for who the character is.
Right, right. It wasn't
So,
inappropriate. It just wasn't. It wasn't super clear.
so with that being said, I want to know what do you have coming out as far as your shows go and stuff like that?
So we have our summer series, which we do. We've been doing the last few summers, where we're gonna do TV movies based on, or that are like pilots or reunion movies from TV shows. So we do a lot of TV movies, but we also like to hit the TV shows. So I think we have maybe Magnum PI. I think Matlock we're gonna do this summer. We have a bunch. Oh, I finally found. I've been looking for years for a movie called Bionic Showdown with Sandra Bullock. I
Oh,
finally found it, John, because it's not widely available. But we're also going to do a weird little movie from the 70s called, I'm sure you've heard of it, Kiss and the Phantom of the Park. Kiss Beats the Phantom of the Park. The one and
oh, cool.
only Kiss movie that has also been very difficult to find, and we found it.
Awesome. I can't wait to actually hear that one.
Yeah, it's gonna be wild. I can't wait to talk about it. It's so 70s.
Okay. So I had Zoe on last night, guys, and we actually did our Warriors review for that tomorrow night at 8 o'clock Central Time, 9 o'clock Eastern Time. I have Tamika coming back, and we're going to be reviewing the fourth Superman movie because we're reviewing
Nice.
all the Superman movies up until the new Superman comes out. So after Superman 4, we're just going to go with Man of Steel, and then we're cutting that off as far as the Superman reviews goes. But we are going to be reviewing the new Superman movie when it comes out in July. But I also have some other news I want to bring you guys. So I'll actually have It Doesn't Hold Up podcast coming on next month on the 29th on a Sunday. And we're going to be talking about I Know What You Did Last Summer. I'll have Stu and Smith coming on to do that review with me. So I'm excited to talk about it. Then in August, I actually have the Doom Generation podcast coming back. And we're going to be reviewing Airborne, 1993's Airborne. So I'm excited to talk about Airborne. It's one of my favorite movies from the 90s growing up. So I got that one coming. And also too, that's about everything I have coming out as far as that goes. We have all our Superman stuff as well for the audio podcast and stuff. If you guys want to listen to it, we have Thunderbolts. We're reviewing all the Last of Us episodes and stuff. So we have a lot of stuff going on over here at Movies Lovers Night. So guys, don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe button, and all that other good stuff here at Movie Lovers Unite. Also, too, go ahead and visit Rossie at Rossie's Clubhouse. She just got done interviewing Lance Laszlo about a couple of weeks ago. That's actually on the audio podcast and also on the video podcast as well. So go ahead and check her out. And always until next time, guys, have a great and safe night. And thank you again, Beth, for coming back. I do appreciate this.
Thank you, John.
You're very welcome. Okay, guys, have a great safe night. We'll catch you guys on the next one. Later, guys.